fell in love with this man, right? But my daughter cannot accept that I have true feelings for him. She's mad because I left her lazy, Dad, aka my ex-husband, to the curb. He wouldn't work, he wouldn't do anything. Why would I put up with that? Well, little Miss Daughter wants to be center of attention, so I might just send her to boarding school. Hey guys, Mr. Reddito here. I just want to mention this before we start with the story. Today's story comes in two different point of views, and now we're going to start with the main story, the very first post that was ever released, and it is from the mother's point of view. Here it is. I've been divorced for 2 years now. My ex-husband Mike did not cheat on me or anything. If he did, I don't know anything about it. Neither do I care. He just stopped being a responsible father and husband. He lost his long-term job 4 years before the divorce, and I understand how devastating that was for him. He's one of those people who have been trained in a single field and will most likely find it hard to adapt quickly to a new specialty. I'm guessing this is what most employers thought because he either got rejected almost immediately or got offered a mediocre job that even my 16-year-old daughter would have the common sense to refuse. For years, I took up the responsibility of taking care of and providing for the entire house. Thankfully, I just had one child, and she was the type that's matured really quickly. She understood that things had changed and helped me take care of my home when my husband was in what I'd call his depressed phase. A few months after being idle, Mike began to help with the housework and with taking care of Nikki, my daughter. I own a few supermarkets, by the way, and I also have a blog in which I make some money from, but that's just a side hustle. I'll never understand what happened to Mike that changed him for the worse. I tried being patient and even asked him to tell me what the reason for his mood was, so that we could work together and get through it. But all that effort got wasted, and I ended up being beyond frustrated. I held on to those 5 years because of the love I had for Mike, but mainly it was for Nikki. The man I married wasn't the man Mike had suddenly become. Go ahead, feel free to judge me all you want, but I don't believe that a person who was married and had a supportive partner should shut them out completely because of one failure. It was like him begging me for divorce. Then there was the fact that he was becoming a bad influence on my daughter. There was the drinking and smoking eventually. Nikki was 12 years old at the time, and she told me that she wanted to try alcohol. Apparently, she asked Mike when he was intoxicated, and he told her that it tasted yummy. Then there was the fact that he kept on taking money from my daughter to sponsor his sordid lifestyle. She starts working this part-time job in one of my stores when she was 14, just about to start high school. I was so proud of her for wanting to take charge at a young age, and yes, she learned very quickly. I paid for her course, and sometimes gave her bonuses, and when I found out that Mike was emotionally blackmailing her to rob her of her hard-earned money to buy some cheap booze, guys, I lost it. I immediately filed for a divorce and have no regrets ever since then. I think the only downside is the way Nikki treats me now. Back then, she looked at me and said I could certify that she loved me as her mother, without a doubt. But as soon as the divorce was settled, things changed between the two of us. I gave her space at first because I knew that being away from her father would be hard for her. He was her favorite parent, and back when Mike worked and was a good husband and father, he doted on Nikki. So I'm not entirely surprised that she had an inclination towards him. I was jealous of their relationship in the beginning, but learned to be happy with it. A friend had told me that the relationship between a daughter and her father was special, and while yes, I could not really relate, I was glad that my daughter had a good relationship with both her parents. Don't get me wrong, Nikki does not hate me, but she treats me like I'm the one of the teachers in her school. Indifferent should be the word. It's either the divorce made things bad or that my daughter and I had a terrible relationship from the start. I did put in an effort to build a relationship with her these 2 years post-divorce, but after the little bonding moment, things went back to normal. I even gave her permission to talk to her father so she would be happy and understand that it wasn't my intention to keep her away from Mike. I think that was one thing I know. It worked, just to strengthen our relationship. She was very grateful for the chance to talk to her dad whenever she wanted, but the only catch was to make sure I read their text every week. She managed to get over the shock of my request soon and conceded. Now that you know the genesis of my single mother life, I also want to mention that I met someone that I am pretty interested in. As career-focused as I am, I'm also a human being who wants to feel loved. Daniel brought that into my life, and I met him almost 7 months ago in one of my branches. A few conversations and dates later, I knew that he was going to be a part of my life. Even though it was temporary, he reminded me so much of the old Mike, with a few extra advantages to boot. He lost his wife early and has no children, and is very career-driven, as I am. Well, that is, I guess you could say, until he met me. It was nice having someone to constantly call and ask how I was doing, or was it those good morning night texts that made me smile? Last week, I decided it was time to tell my daughter about Daniel. I didn't want her to find out on her own, and neither did I want to keep postponing the inevitable. I fear that I've made some sort of mistake now, because Nikki is cold towards me. I told her everything and asked if she wanted to meet Daniel, who wanted to meet her as well, but she told me that I was a horrible person for dating behind her back for so long. Well, you know what? She may be right. I might have kept the truth from her for a little too long, but I wasn't sure of Daniel till 3 months ago, and I was scared of telling Nikki because of this exact particular reaction. I have not told Daniel that was Nikki's reaction yet, but I soon will. He knows I've told her, though, and I think I'm messing things up now. I hope I'm not making yet another mistake. Update number 1. Still, the mother's point of view. Hey guys, so Nikki has met Daniel now. As some of you might have guessed, she doesn't like him. And it's not because he's done anything in particular, it's more just because he just is him. I think she dislikes the mere existence of him. As dramatic as that sounds. After telling Daniel that my daughter wasn't happy hearing about him, he decides to see for himself. I didn't think it was a good idea, especially since I have not gotten her to welcome the idea, but after a few trial and errors on my part, I decided to let Daniel shoot his shot. Daniel, oh boy, he was pretty nervous. Though he tried to hide it very well, and the fact that he had never been a father did not help the matters very much. But the way he put in effort to make my daughter like him made me fall for him even more. So, Daniel had brought Nikki's favorite food, along with some tickets to a concert that was happening in just a few short weeks. I don't even know how or who the singer is, but apparently she's a big sensation, though not so popular. Daniel had some research and was convinced that the teenage girls were into things like that and bought them for my daughter blinded. To my surprise, she had discarded both his gifts and wanted to talk to him alone. I thought it was her mature side speaking, but Nikki was only interested in drilling him. It got to the point where I had to stop her because she became downright rude. She starts with the usual questions, asking who Daniel was, what he did for a living, and why he was interested in little old me. Daniel is career-oriented, like I've said before, but he doesn't make as much as I do. It's just a little less, but at this point in my life, I can't care about that. I had a husband who didn't work for years, and had to deal with all the bills with my business being fairly new. She used this against Daniel, asking if he was only seeing me because I had money, and then proceeded to ask even more rude questions, and I rather not say what they were. Daniel kept saying he was okay with the interrogation, but I was not okay with it. Nikki had crossed some boundaries, that's for sure, which was very unlike her. She was cold, she was dismissive, but that was it. I fully expected her to walk out when she saw Daniel, worst case scenario, but for her to decide to ask those horrible questions was not something I could condone. I had sent her to her room and apologized profusely to Daniel. And when he had gone, went up to see Nikki. That's when I figured out her father was behind everything. She didn't tell me, but I didn't need her to. She was already talking to him on the phone when I walked in. After a bit of interrogation on my part, and resistance on Nikki's part, I realized she wasn't acting of her own accord, and I almost seized her phone right then and there. The thought of how much worse it would make things, it was the only way she communicated with her father. And if I did that, she would absolutely just never forgive me. I needed us to be on good terms so that she would take a liking to Daniel. I told Daniel my theory, and he told me he suspected as much. Daniel did not deal with children so much because he had none of his own, but he knew that Nikki wasn't like that. He told me that there was some fear in her voice as she spoke to him, and that wasn't the quality of a truly rude child. That was when we came up with a plan to prove that my daughter was truly being manipulated by her father. It would involve Daniel staying over on some days and trying to make Nikki like him as a potential stepfather. I'd managed to overhear one of Nikki's conversations with her father, and with that knowledge I hatched a plan with Daniel. Daniel even reasoned that at some point she would see that her father was only manipulating her, and guys, I really hope it works. Alright guys, Mr. Reddito here. So this is update number 2. And this is the point where the daughter finds the post and, well, she posts her own point of view. Let's hop into it. Update 2, daughter's point of view. Oh my gosh, my mom is the most difficult person I've ever met. Honestly. When she got a divorce from my dad, I felt terrible for weeks. She didn't even feel remotely remorseful, and when she saw that I was going to hide in a shell for a long time, she gives me permission to speak to Dad on the weekends. So I get my phone. Eventually, it's my phone now, and it got elevated to calling and texting whenever I wanted. Though I was to show my mom my text messages with Dad, I didn't let it bother me as much because I said a lot more when I called. Then she told me about Daniel. I was pretty surprised and stormed off in disbelief because my mom, yes, was a busy woman, and she was the last person I think would have a social life, much less a romantic one. I told my dad about Daniel almost immediately, and he was as shocked as I was. My dad made me promise to get as much information as I could about Daniel, and I agreed to do so. He also mentioned asking about Daniel's income, because there was a chance that he was only with my mom for her money. When I learned that he was indeed earning lower than my mom, I knew my dad was right. My dad told me to try everything I could to separate my mom and Daniel, though he didn't need to. Unfortunately, no matter how many things I tried and said, Mom did not listen to me. I tried a few other things, starving myself, threatening to run away from home, and even cussing at Daniel when he came over. Nothing worked, and I began to doubt myself and my dad. When I first met Daniel, he was very, very nice. It was strange, I would say even borderline creepy. Over time, I got used to him being nice to me, but made sure I rejected any gift or offer he tried to give me. I also made sure to be on the watch out for any suspicious behavior from Daniel. So far, though, nothing's really happened. Now Daniel's living with us, and I don't want to even remember how angry my dad got when I told him. He blamed me for not trying hard enough, and I was surprised to see that side of him. It had gotten to the point where I had to end the call, wanting time to recover from the call. Dad apologized profusely, but I was still shocked by the outburst. Yesterday, Daniel and I went out. My mom said he wanted to spend some time alone, and while I was against it at first, I reasoned that it gave me an opportunity to spot the flaws in the man that my mom was interested in. We had gone shopping, and I only got something for my mom and had eaten out. I ate because I had not had breakfast before leaving. I thought I had wasted my time following Daniel around, but then I saw that he made a call to someone, promising to spend the following day with him. Some romantic words followed, and I knew that I had caught him in an act. My dad was so happy when he heard the news, and he praised me, and I forgot all about the outburst. So I told my mom as well. And she told me that I was making up lies to separate her from Daniel. It was pretty annoying to hear, and she asked for proof before she could believe me. I don't know what else to do. At first, I thought of leaving her to find out the bitter truth on her own, but I knew my conscience would not let me have peace if I did that, and I'm still thinking of a plan. And the only thing I've managed to come up with is hiding the keys to Daniel's car. It would delay his plans, and if I'm lucky, I would catch him apologizing to his lover over the phone. That would be more than enough proof for my mom, hopefully. Update number 3. Still, daughter's point of view. I decided to do things my own way. I first hid the keys to Daniel's car and made sure that he could not go out to see whoever it was he had made plans with. I wasn't going to sit back and let him hurt my mom in such a way. They both found out that I was the one who had taken the keys, and my mom made sure to ground me and take away most of my devices. That was the first time she did that. And when the shock wore off, I got very upset. That's when I made a huge mistake. Not even my dad knows this, and I made a hole in one of Daniel's tires because my mom got really upset about me hiding the keys to his precious car. Now, I don't know why I did it, but I was so satisfied afterward, and I thought of wrecking the car completely. But that would take time and effort, so I settled for a bit less. I thought that he would notice the puncture immediately, but to my shock after school, I got home to discover that Daniel had been in a minor accident. The puncture wasn't as noticeable as I thought it was, and so Daniel drove off without checking his vehicle. I had to tell my mom I was responsible for the crash. I tried to justify my actions, but ended up apologizing instead. Mom didn't even care, though, and threatened to send me off to boarding school. She told me that I would not be able to contact my dad there, and I'd return to my senses as well. I tried telling her that Daniel was most likely cheating on her, then ended up spilling my conversation with Pops. I told her that both my dad and I thought Daniel was using her for money, but that served to be a waste of time. This morning I saw researching of boarding schools, and that was how I knew that it wasn't an empty threat. Is there any way to get my mother to see that she's making a huge mistake here? Update number 4. Now we're switching back to the mom's point of view with her newest post. I almost can't believe that Nikki was responsible for Daniel's accident. The worst part is that she kept on defending herself and her useless father. I knew he was slowly turning my daughter into someone I could not even recognize. But causing an accident? An almost fatal one at that. I'm still trying to process everything, and the only person keeping me sane is Daniel. Luckily, he wasn't even injured bad. A concussion, a dislocated arm, and some wounds, and I almost could not face him, but he managed to understand that it was out of my control. We really had not expected things to turn out this way. The plan was to fool Nikki into thinking that Daniel was seeing someone else, knowing she would involve her father. I'd overheard one of their conversations, where Mike had apparently asked Nikki to give him Daniel's number and address. I also knew all along that she and her dad planned that she would go on a hunger strike, which is probably why it made me mad as much as it did. She kept on doing things for a man that didn't deserve her love and attention. Daniel and I would then show Nikki that it was all fake. The whole thing with Daniel going out with someone else. I'd hoped that it would prove to Nikki that her dad was planting absolute nonsense in her head. If that did not work, I was going to permanently stop her from talking to her father and even taking possible legal action. Our plan, it backfired, though. Clearly. Daniel had asked me to go easy on Nikki, but clearly he did not understand the gravity of the situation. She was 16 for God's sake and needed to start thinking right. After grounding her and threatening her with boarding school, I hoped it would help her come to her senses, and I also spoke to a few friends and some recommended therapy. I wasn't really interested in sending my daughter to some boarding school. I had just said that out of anger, but she didn't seem to care, and I started researching a few of them, wondering if it was really a good idea. In the end, I decided against it and tried talking Nikki into therapy. She told me that nothing was going to convince her to go with the idea. Daniel was out at the hospital by then. And, well, he stayed at his own place, wished me good luck with Nikki, and he reasoned that he was the reason she was always angry. But a small part of me believed that he was going to leave me soon. I wouldn't blame him. He almost lost his life because of my silly little daughter. So, a week ago, I had another argument with Nikki. She tried talking me into taking her father back, and when I told her that I'd rather remain single forever, she lost it. I watched quietly as she raved and insulted me, wondering if the young woman in front of me was really my Nikki. I talked to Daniel over the phone after, and even he didn't know what else to do. So I decided to give my daughter what she wanted, and as a mother, I really am tired. If my daughter wanted to be with her father, then I'm tired of fighting a losing battle. I knew that Mike stayed in a one-bedroom apartment now and lived off Lord knows what. Maybe seeing that would change her mind about Mike, I thought. I guess I was wrong. Nikki moved in with her father 2 weeks ago and hasn't even called once. If that is not enough, well, how she wants to do things, then so be it. I won't stop her. I won't try convincing her that she needs to stay with me, and I finally handed over guardianship to Mike 2 days ago in court. That's right. Mike wasn't happy about it, and I'm sure he thinks he'll get some money, because he now is Nikki's legal guardian. Daniel isn't happy with the decision I've made, but I'm sure he'll get over it soon. Now all I want to do is see where this relationship leads, because he's the best man I've personally ever come across. I hope to have more than just a relationship with him. Anyways, if you guys have any advice on what you would do about your daughter, pretending this was your daughter, what would you do? Well, there you have it. OP doesn't want anything to do with her daughter, and it was a lot of problems leading up that led to this. And at the end of the day, OP is happy with her significant other. She said she wants to see where this can develop and lead to, and you can't blame someone for wanting to be happy, but here's the question. Do you think OP did everything possible to help out her daughter and convince them and try to get her away from her conniving, toxic, alcoholic dad? I want to know your thoughts of that. So drop it down in the comment section down below, guys. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you're having a great day. My name's Mr. Reddito. Once again, I do these stories every day. Hit that subscribe button if you want to be a part of these day-to-day readings. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, and just remember one thing. It's cool to be kind, guys. See ya.